Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to Evolving Consciousness. In today's video, we are going to talk about the key lessons, the key takeaways from one of the international bestsellers, which is going to be immortal for years to come, for eons to come. Some of you might have heard about this book. This book is called The Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And the good part about this book is basically an autobiography of a person who was in a Nazi concentration camp for years. And you might be thinking, how is this relevant to you and me? The fact is, Viktor Frankl's pivotal, our key philosophy, our key takeaway, our key understanding was this emphasis, was this enlightening each one of us on the fact that the deepest desire any human being has is the desire for meaning. Now, this would be a little hard to comprehend, especially in the formative years. But if you deeply understand, he says that actually everyone is chasing things, objects, experiences, and situations because deep within they want to feel meaningful. And until and unless we quench the thirst for meaning, our life is always going to feel unsatisfied and unfulfilled. Now, I've always believed, I've resonated with the school of thought which says that life is all about perception management. Elections have been won only because of perception management. It's all about how you're seeing a particular situation. It's all about the way you're perceiving a situation. Now, the amazing part of this book, which I personally found very fascinating, is this man is not talking about some philosophy which he has read from different books. He's talking from his own personal experience. You and me cannot even imagine how an Holocaust survivor, a person who lived, who struggled his daily days in a concentration chamber, and we all know how brutal the Nazis were towards the Jews in the concentration chamber. And forget about thinking about writing a book, just surviving and the fact that you will get away from that horrible place of torture in so many different levels is itself a dream for many. But Viktor Frankl, even in those dire circumstances, thinks of how we can contribute to the world once he's out of it. Bear in mind that there's no guarantee that this person will be outside. It's all a possibility game. And through that kind of situation, in that kind of a pathetic state of mind, a person creates this piece of work which is so impactful, because this is not some superficial work. This work is very deep and it's very meaningful. Victor says that the deepest desire any human being has, whether he realizes it or not, is a desire for meaning, is a desire to be meaningful. If you think about it, right, there is a very funny study which has been coming out in the psychological studies which says that boredom is found to be one of the serious reasons for all the mental ailments like fatigue, depression, and all the kind of mental maladies mankind is subjected to. And we always come up with these excuses that we are justified to suffer, that we are justified to feel negative, that all these things are happening in my life, and as a result of which melancholy is something which is supposed to be natural to me. I mean, being happy doesn't seem right, because we think that when we are clouded, when we are completely surrounded with situations which don't please us or which do not fit into our understanding of what should be right and what should not be right, we suddenly think that we are justified in being negative, we are justified in being critical. But just look at Viktor Frankl's life. He had all reasons at his disposal to feel depressed. He had all reasons in the world to feel absolutely dejected, to feel grief, apathy, but still the person chose to be different. Now, I have sort of condensed my 4 takeaways from the book. If somebody is really interested and fond of reading biographies, autobiographies, this book is a must read, because this book will take you on a journey. This book will take you on a journey of the different struggles these prisoners, these inmates used to have. And Viktor Frankl's life is being curated in that book. And the interesting part about this book is that the storyline is not following a strict timeline, and it's all coming out of the memory of Viktor Frankl. So you will find yourself moving between past and future. But the important part is the key lessons he's trying to drive is itself so compelling and also very inspiring. To begin with, this very thought that this person, despite sort of going through the worst of situations any man can imagine, even has this idea in his thought process or in his mind that how he can contribute. And from this book, a major therapy or a major school of thought came about, which is now called as logotherapy. The entire focus of logotherapy is about building meaning in human beings' life. And there's a beautiful quote which Victor quotes, which is coming from the philosopher Nietzsche. He says, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow." There's this book by Simon Sinek saying, "Know Your Why." I haven't read that, but the main focus and the central purpose of that book has also been on this question of why. Oftentimes we are all so much accustomed, we are all so much occupied in trying to figure out how things are going to happen. How things are going to happen is a secondary question. The primary question which we all need to endeavor to answer is the why. Because once we answer this very important question of why, all the other secondary and all the other questions are easier to answer. Now, Victor says there are 3 practical ways in which we can figure out this meaning. And there are certain things which is talked about, which sort of brings about a subtle reminder, which sort of brings about a paradigm shift in the way we perceive this idea of meaning. We'll come to that, but before that, let us talk about these 3 distinct layers. Now, number 1 is talking about work. Now, it is said that when you do work which is meaningful, the work which you are doing, no matter in what walk of life you are, no matter what strata of society you are, there is nothing called as a high or low. It's all about the work which you are given an opportunity to do. Do you find meaning out of that work? Do you feel that that work is serving a certain meaning? Now, meaning can be in so many different ways. The work which you're doing, you're getting a certain amount of salary. Let's say you're working in a multinational, and through that salary, you are able to take care of your family members. You are able to do something for the society. Or through that work, you probably are creating an impact in your own small ways. Now, not everything needs to be huge, not everything needs to be grand. Understand this very deep concept that the ocean is formed out of small drops, and every drop has a contribution in that mighty ocean. What we see is the mighty ocean, but what we don't see is that mighty ocean is essentially a product of all those millions of drops. So this idea that anyone's work is insignificant versus someone's work is more significant is actually not the right way to approach it. Every person's work is significant. I'll give you a funny example. It might sound funny, but it is absolutely instrumental for us to understand, for us to deeply contemplate the value of work. Now, let's say everyone is well educated in our country and everyone is really having great jobs. Who do you think will be, your hair cutter, who do you think will be a barber? If everyone is well occupied and nobody really wants to do that job of a barber, who do you think will you approach for cutting your own hair? The reason I brought this example is every job is significant. There are no extra people in this planet. And Victor says that when you try to find meaning in the work which you do, and he gives a lot of importance on every day of our life. Because let's understand, days slip into weeks and weeks into months and months into years, and before we realize, we are probably reaching the end of our life. And every day matters. Every day, what are we doing? Does it really have any meaning? This is a very important question to ask ourselves. Because this is the ultimate desire. And once you start feeling fulfilled, you will automatically start feeling a lot of joy in your day-to-day activities. Because now your brain knows, your subconscious brain knows that you are engaging in meaningful pursuits. Now, the second dimension which Frankl talks about is through love. Now, love can be in so many different ways. You can have great relationships where you get to harbor this feeling, this emotion of love. There is a real life story of a particular patient who was going through a chronic ailment, and he was left with his parents as the only people with him, his old ailing parents. And suddenly, one fine day, a thought came about in his consciousness that if I am gone or if I am not able to cure myself out of this chronic ailment, who the hell will take care of my parents? And this particular thought inspired him, told his subconscious brain that going or suffering through this disease or dying is not an option for me. I have to get back on my toes so that I can serve my parents. And you know what? That person recovered from his chronic ailment. Because science has also proven that when you have a cause which you are deeply connected with on an emotional level, which you are deeply connected with from this emotion of love, healing is naturally accelerated. And Victor talks about this. He says that when through love, whether it's through a relationship or through the things which you enjoy doing, this is the reason it is said potential unexpressed turns into pain. Potential unexpressed turns into pain. No matter what job we are doing, it need not necessarily so happen that the job which we are doing, we might be in a position that we are not pursuing our passion as our mainstream job and mainstream profession, but that should not be an excuse for us to not pursue the passion. Because when we pursue a passion, when we are in that state of flow, those are the activities we need to engage in on a daily basis. And this is not a waste of time. To the contrary, this is adding a lot of value to your own consciousness, and it's like engaging, it's like sharpening your senses. There's a beautiful story in this context which I'm reminded of spontaneously. This story is about two woodcutters. Now, two of those woodcutters were given a task to sort of cut a certain amount of wood in a stipulated amount of time. And it so happened that one of the woodcutters was constantly working on cutting the trees, whereas one was only cutting the tree for a certain amount of hours in the day, and after that he would just disappear and vanish to the other cutter. And after the stipulated amount of time was over, it turned out that the person who only worked for some amount of hours in a day, he had a lot more to show. Now the other person, his counterpart, was a bit shocked, and he complained to the owner that, sir, probably this person has taken wood from somewhere else, because I used to work more than him, and how come he has more wood than me? For which this person replied, my friend, you used to work the whole day in cutting the wood, but I used to work for few hours in cutting the wood and few hours I used to sharpen my axe. I used to spend those hours in sharpening my axe because he understood what efficiency is. And when we are pursuing our passion, we are basically refueling our efficiency. We are enhancing our efficiency because it's not about the number of hours you are putting in your work, but it's about the quality of hours you are putting in your work. And now there are countless researches which suggest that engaging in activities which you consider as your passion boosts your efficiency to another level. And third dimension which Victor talks about is through suffering. Now, when we hear this word suffering, automatically there's a lot of chaotic pessimism which is naturally offspringing in our consciousness. But there's a beautiful quote which Nietzsche says, and it's very insightful. I would like to quote it in this context. He says, "The tree that would grow to heaven, the tree that would grow to heaven must send its roots to hell. The tree that would grow to heaven must send its roots to hell." And oftentimes it is said that the people who achieved greatness in life, they never had an easy life. To the contrary, it is said that people who have a very simple life, everything is going as per what they thought it should go, they never did anything great, they never did anything substantial. If you look at any legend's life, the legend's life is filled with a lot of ups and downs, a lot of upheavals. Take the example of Mahendra Singh Dhoni, take the example of Narendra Damodar Das Modi. These people went through the most difficult struggles of their life. And those struggles were necessary to forge their character. It is said, there's a beautiful quote which says that all the pressure makes sense because now I can see the diamonds. Hence, when we recontextualize the meaning of this word called suffering, everything changes. Let's understand Viktor Frankl's day-to-day life. It was nothing short of suffering. In the layman understanding, every second of his life was filled with torture and suffering. But this man gave a different meaning to that. Instead of feeling sorrow, melancholy, instead of feeling suppressed, this person thought and he exercised the ultimate freedom available to each one of us. And Victor talks about this in his book in great extent. He says each human being has an ultimate freedom, a freedom which cannot be taken by anyone or anything. No circumstance can take that freedom. And that freedom is the freedom of response. No matter how chaotic the situation is, how you respond to that situation lies in your jurisdiction. And he says, and he's not only saying or preaching, he showcased that demeanor throughout his stay in the concentration camp. Because let's understand, Man's Search for Meaning is not a philosophical book, it's an autobiography. A man who stayed in the concentration chamber of Nazis, which is notoriously known to torture the inmates of the concentration camp. So, this is not only real, this is absolutely substantial and something which we all can take inspiration from. And number 3 of what he says is something very interesting. He says, always choose difficult goals. He says that when we have dreams, when we have lofty goals, and we intentionally engage in some struggles, in the struggle of trying to accomplish something which is worthwhile, then automatically our brain, our neurocircuitry is triggered in a certain direction, and it's not very important whether we succeed or fail. But the important thing is that struggle is absolutely necessary for us to become a better version. He says the end result of your goal, whether you achieve the goal or not, is of less relevance. The more relevant aspect is the kind of person you became in the journey. Now, a very simple example to understand this is, suppose someone one fine day suddenly gets inspired to come in peak shape in terms of his physical fitness levels. Now, he might have a certain diet regime and certain exercise schedule set up for himself, and he might also have some goal of, say, let's say, reducing 10 kgs or 12 kgs in certain amount of months. Now, whether or not he achieves that is subject to a multitude of factors. Not everything will come under his control. There can be a lot of situations and dynamics. But what is more important here is the amount of discipline, the amount of willpower the person would have to exercise in his daily struggles that would make him a better personality. Because automatically he wanted to go towards that goal, and in trying to achieve that goal, he pushed himself outside his present confines, and as a result of that he became a better personality. And he says that it's always very important to be very careful in choosing worthy goals, because if you are chasing meaningless goals, then it's an absolute waste of your time and energy. And there's another beautiful caveat which he gives in his book. He says that most of us think that we should have one central purpose of our life, which is absolutely impractical. He says that purpose and meaning is subject to a lot of dynamism, because over a period of our life, depending on which age span we belong to, our goals change, our needs change. But what is really important here is that instead of asking life what is the meaning, we should be ready to answer to life, because he says that understand this or probably visualize this, that life is asking you this question. Instead of you asking life the question like what is the meaning of my life, be in a position to answer to life. Think that life is asking you this question and you need to answer that. And through your life, you will see that your meanings change. Your meanings are flexible. And every day is important. Days are essentially a part of your life. And once you start building this kind of a narrow focus, things seem absolutely meaningful. And once the thirst for meaning is quenched, fulfillment is a natural offspring. And everything seems to make sense, and solace and serenity is a natural offspring of your demeanor. I hope my today's video brought a lot of clarity and gave you some inspiration from this person called Viktor Frankl. Because Viktor Frankl's life, his entire take on suffering, is not only inspiring, but it also makes us laugh at our own self for foolishly being melancholic, for foolishly being hurt at silly situations of life. Because look at the man, he didn't come from he didn't drop from heaven. He was just a man like you and me. He had the same brain like you and me. He had the same hands like you and me. What made the difference is the way he thought about the situation. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you really loved this video, don't forget to share this video with a couple of your friends who are searching for meaning in their life. And even if they don't know whether they are searching for meaning in their life, ultimately everyone is searching for meaning in their life. Thank you so much for your time on my video, and I'll meet you in the next video.